Prison jail guards of Reddit. What's the weirdest crap you've seen while walking past a cell on your patrol? I used to work third shift, 10 PM to 6 AM, at a prison in Oklahoma, usually in the same place until this happened. We had to do a count every hour on the hour. There was a guy in Bravo pod that would always ask me how I was doing. Never thought anything of it. During my 2 AM count I get to his cell and he's standing at the door holding a piece of paper against the glass. It says, "Can I show you something? If yes, come back after count. If not, have a good night." So I loudly ask, "What the heck do you want to show me?" He starts shaking his head and puts his finger to his lip, shushing me. I say whatever and continue my count. After finishing the top rung I have to walk past his cell anyway since it's at the bottom of the stairs. I shine my flashlight in his cell and again loudly ask what he wanted. He proceeded to pull out his dong and started beating it to me. Chatrolite eye roll. My dad, now retired, used to manage the special needs unit of a state prison. This is where they put inmates who were deaf, wheelchair bound, seriously mentally ill, developmentally challenged, etc., etc. One guy liked to tie his toothbrush to his shoelaces and wear it tucked into his shoe all the time. It wasn't a shiv, he just found that doing it kept the voices away. Another inmate worked in the cafeteria and liked to use the miniature powdered donuts as demon binoculars to scan for, you guessed it, demons. He was super duper dark skinned. The powdered sugar around his eyes really contrasted. I work at a level 5 supermax prison in a small southwestern Virginia town and we had this guy. This guy. He kept getting his ass kicked and normally we kind of know why it's happening, but in this case, we didn't. Come to find out, other inmates thought he had drugs. One day we caught him with white looking powder on his nose, so we had to take him out and drug test him and cavity search him as well. This happened 4-5 times over the course of 5 months and he passed every test and search every time. Well, one day we caught him. This guy was beating off, letting his jizz dry, crushing it, and snorting the crap. Good times. The new trend at my prison is the dudes tie a string around their dong and then attach it to their big toe going through their pants. Then when they're talking to myself or other female staff they'll sit there and tap their foot to get off. I was told if I see anyone tapping their foot to ask them to pull their pant leg up and see if there's string. Who knows what they'll think of next. Can't wait for middle school students to read this and start a new trend. I'm a security guard at a psych hospital, so I feel qualified to throw a story in here. One night I was called to the adult psych floor and on arrival I was told, the patient will not give us back her radio, and she has now put it into her lady parts. I will never forget the euphoria of walking down the hallway toward the room and hearing Hootie and the Blowfish blaring. CSR here for 7 years. Weirdest one for me is a guy jizzing on his window then licking it off. Definitely a WTF moment. You are what you eat, so maybe he was just being himself. I work in a level 5 state prison. My first day on the job, there was an inmate in the disciplinary housing unit who keeps getting sent to us from the state psychiatric hospital because they can't handle him. When the officers working on the unit walked up to his cell, he began to rip apart his balls with his own hands while yelling, "I feel no pain." This was the second time. I was a CO for a pre-release center that had a dorm-style facility. During a normal security check, I was walking through the bathroom and just happened to see something large and odd sitting on the ground beside an inmate's feet behind a stall door. Yes, the inmate bathrooms actually had stalls with doors. Well, I opened the door and the inmate was just sitting on the toilet not doing anything at all while holding a honey bun. And the thing on the ground by his feet, a giant 5 pounds block of butter. I worked at a maximum security prison. It was right before Christmas, and this guy made a Christmas tree complete with a revolving train, all from paper, string, scraps of his mattress cover, and little pieces of tape that he had salvaged from his daily lunches. The conical frame of the tree was suspended with string that he had attached to his light fixture, and he used scraps of his mattress cover, which was green, to serve as the tree's needles. The mind-blowing part was this: he created a wind turbine that was powered by his air vent on a wall near the ceiling. The turbine, complete with functioning gears that he had made out of paper, turned a shaft that served as the trunk of the tree. At the base, The shaft revolved and was attached to origami boxcars that circled the tree. At first glance, I didn't understand what it was until another officer who regularly worked the unit came by when he saw my look of awe and confusion. He was allowed to keep it up for a while but was eventually required to take it down. I think he got a write-up or sanctions for destroying his mattress. It was incredible. Another guy painted an incredible picture of an angel on the wall of his cell, complete with a full scripture verse, with fesses. I worked in a small jail in my home district. The most memorable character I had the pleasure, or rather dismay of meeting was known around the jail as the Serpent. I kid you not, during shower time this guy would completely soap himself up and wiggle slide around the room, hissing violently. Lots of other great and significantly more disgusting stories, but that's the one which stood out for me the most. If I got a life sentence, this is the kind of crap I would do to pass time. Corrections officer here. I was leaving work one day when I was told to head to the infirmary. We get there and the inmate is trying to off himself. How? Glad you asked. He had bitten his IV in half and was trying to suck all his blood out through it. He also made several attempts to spit it on us. I love my career, always something new to deal with. One WTF moment was this: one kid had collected newspapers and turned his cell into a human hamster cage. When we extracted him, he was balled up under his bunk like a hamster. The place even smelled like a hamster cage. God, I wish you had given him a hamster wheel connected to a gen to power the prison. I just asked my former roommate, and this is what he had to say. Dude was in a holding cell, padded, said he saw angels and crap, proceeded to tear his own balls off, chewed on them, then lit them on fire with batteries he had smuggled up his ass. Dude is out on the recreational yard, right? He has a necklace made of chicken bones, sewn together. We're like WTF. So a few of us approach this obviously crazy man and ask, you know, what's up with the chicken bones? He says they're part of his religion. They're allowed to have religious items. Wixons have bags of sand, stuff like that. We ask what religion. He says sorcery. We quietly chuckle when he throws himself to the ground and starts screaming sorcery. So we subdue the guy and we ask him, dude, are you alright? He goes, yeah man, it's my religion. Sorcery. I was searching a guy's cell with another company. We pull out a welding gun, homemade, a lock-in scock, homemade flail, and a bunch of other crap. We were locking him up when I found a bowl full of square cutouts of people's faces from magazines and stuff. Chess pieces, numbers, card symbols, all written in squares. I ask him what all this stuff was for. He was a young guy too. He looks at me and says, man, that's for my Dungeons and Dragons game. Not me, but my dad. He worked the high security ward at the state mental hospital. One day he's taking a census count and a patient calls him, and because his eye hurts, guy is sitting on his bed holding his eye, still attached to the ocular nerve, in his hand. And, yes, the eye was pointed at my father. I was chatting to a prison officer I know recently and he told me a few good ones. The prisoners do a thing called crap bombs. They get a milk carton and fill it with crap, then put the narrow end under someone's cell door and jump on it, sending crap spraying across the cell floor. But sometimes they pop at the wrong end, and if it's a second floor cell then it'll spray out the other way and hit whoever is below. Part of helping addicts get by while inside involves giving them liquid methadone. But like anything, it's got a good value to people who can't get it. So some them try and sell it to other prisoners, but they have to swallow it when it's given. He said he's seen one guy vomiting his methadone up straight into the buyer's mouth, mother bird style. I was a detention officer for 6 years. One guy covered his entire cell walls in solitary with scriptures using his crap. We called him Holy Crap. One time a young, frequent flyer came in and was very jittery. I asked if she had anything and she denied. I informed her if she got past the intake process and was caught with anything she'd be charged with a felony 2 instead of a typical 3 due to it being inside the facility. She confessed the drugs were inside her birth canal. So I take her to her private cell and ask her to remove them, and she pulls out 5 caps to needles. The 5 needles were left inside her uncapped. I looked at the other female guard and said, dude, it's about to get messy. Long story short, the inmate was able to retrieve them all without injury by pure luck. I once saw a parolee try to break in. I worked in the county jails for the first 4 years of my career. We had a horseshoe-shaped hallway with 5 or 6 safety cells. These cells are used for inmates who are a danger to themselves. The walls are padded but still fairly hard, and the inmate's clothing is removed and replaced with a heavy garment they cannot make into a noose. Checks are conducted every 15 minutes, for obvious reasons. One day, I had an inmate who had that wide-eyed, 1,000-yard stare with a very unsettling smile on his face most of the time. During one of my checks, I offered him a styrofoam container with some bread and cold cuts. He hadn't been eating, so I was happy to see him take it. He opened the container, removed the bread and stared at me through the glass from about a foot away. I saw him reach his hand behind his nude body and watched his face strain a bit. When he brought his hand back up, he was holding mushy crap which he smeared on the bread and then pressed the 2 slices together. While continuing to stare into my eyes and smile, he took a huge bite from his homemade crap sandwich. I was in disbelief and walked away halfway gagging. When I returned a few minutes later with more deputies, the sandwich was gone and he was licking his fingers. An old co-worker had previously worked in Guantanamo Bay. She said she once had to get on the PA system while an inmate was showering to say, "Detainee, remove the shampoo bottle from your rectum." I was a co in a maximum security prison for around 2 years. Saw a lot of really weird things. The one that stuck with me the most was watching a small white man who was covered in tattoos eating a mini cupcake out of a huge black inmate's butthole. The little white guy was a white supremacist and it was entirely consensual, although I still took both of them to the segregation unit. The weirdest one I didn't experience firsthand, but the other shift told me all about it. A man had stuck the pointy end of a spork down his pee hole and had to be taken to medical. When the doctor removed it, he got agitated and this time stuck staples into the spork so that when they tried to remove it the second time it would catch like a fish hook. They had to take him to the emergency room at a nearby hospital and fillet the man's dong open to remove it. The third time a few weeks later he just cut what was left of his mangled dong off. I've seen people using a toy made of dried compacted poop. So basically, they did butt stuff with butt stuff. My CO friend told me the story of Battleship Guy. So one day when he was booking in new inmates, he was giving them a physical inspection to note any problems. He realized the guy had tied a string around the base of his dong and the shaft was really lumpy. After asking the guy about it, he sent him to medical to get it sorted out. After questioning, the inmate admitted to stealing ceramic pieces of the board game Battleship while at his last prison. He would then use one of the blades from his razor to cut open his dong and insert the pieces under the skin of his dong and waited for it to heal. In all, Battleship Guy had 14 pieces under the skin of his dong. Not just the small ships, he had the large ships in his dong too. So I'm not a jail guard or anything, but I was in jail for a couple of days. Weird snafu with fingerprints or something caused me an extended stay after a night of a little too much fun. Anyway, I was put in population for a day, and when I got there I found a dude that exclaimed rather loudly that he'd suck a dong for a soup. Now I neither had soup, nor a reason to take him up on his offer. But about 3 hours later I noticed another inmate in a rather cheery mood, and the soup guy had a pack of ramen noodles in his hands. My old martial arts teacher was a prison guard for years. These are his stories. The poop guy. One guy was just a depraved psycho who liked to smear crap all over himself and mock the guards because nobody wanted to go in there and grab him to throw him in the shower. So instead, they got a powerful fire hose and blasted him and everything in his cell clean. Seemed to work quite well. Fork dong. He liked to put forks down his dong. The golden staff, that is. He was infected and he knew it. He used it as a weapon by constantly cutting himself and trying to smear people with his blood around the eyes and mouth. Let's just say the cameras were pushed aside a few times away from his cell. The nutball. This was a 5-foot Weasley guy on M10 guards could not take him down. There is footage of this tiny guy surrounded by guards rolling around and he's still in a boxing stance bouncing on the spot, blood dripping down his face. Last was playing in God mode. My mom is an RN at a prison. She said one dude peed in another guy's shoes, so the other guy peed on the initial pee perpetrator's face while he was asleep the following night. It was a literal peeing contest. I was CO for 5 years. Spent some time working in AdSeg. There was a guy who could fell at himself. Just the sound was enough to turn my stomach. One kid had what he called a pillow partner. The most dangerous inmate wrote children's books. We had a serial killer who only killed rich gay men and was an expert martial artist. He could do splits all Van Damme style. While doing my routine rounds one night, I witnessed a gentleman stick his hand up his anus well past the wrist to extract feces and throw it against the wall, consume it. Most disturbing thing I have witnessed for sure. I was officer for 5 years. One incident happened while I was walking the top tier at High Desert State Prison. While I went from pod A to pod B from the middle doors, all the white inmates at the tables on the bottom tier just started giggling as I approached one of the cells. In my head I was wondering, why the frick are they just giggling like little girls? Then as I passed the cell and looked, and I saw one guy sitting next to another guy with his arm around him. He was giving him a handy. The bottom tier exploded with laughter. My wife has been a detentions officer for 8 years now, and I get these stories almost every night. She mainly works with the behavioral observational inmates, mental cases. Her top story is an inmate with a colostomy bag who used to rent out the hole in his side for guys to frick. Another inmate had a walker. Whenever he would get an apple or orange at lunch, he would stab it onto the legs of the walker and use it as a butt toy. They finally had to take his walker away and stop giving him apples or oranges for lunch. One of the gay tanks had a wedding. They stitched toilet paper together to make a wedding dress, did makeup with the dye from Skittles, and even had a bouquet of flowers made of toilet paper dyed with Kool-Aid. They even had little name cards to show everyone's seating arrangements. She wasn't there for it, but there was a guy in her jail that popped his own eye out with a spoon. Another guy ripped one of his testicles out of his scrotum and unraveled it. They came in to find him playing with it. I'm not a guard, but my class to Radia County Jail once. As the sheriff took us past the padded cell, he pointed out several chip marks in the small glass window. Turns out an inmate had pulled out her own tooth and attempted to chip through the window with it. In no specific order, a butt plug fashioned out of soap, a guy furiously jerking off with the cell light on, not trying to hide anything. I mean, he was freaking going at it. Crap art is hideous, especially when mixed with period blood. Guy went to the hospital for stomach pains. Apparently he tried doing butt stuff with his radio and it went past the point of retrieval. This is Girl Pepe. She only appears once in every 50,000 memes, like in 3 seconds for good luck. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.